Okay, so now we're going to make the metallic map. So this is going to determine how metallic, a given spot on the surface is going to be. And just like the roughness map, this is going to require a grayscale input. Now you'll notice that the output nodes by default have allow both things in. So it's not going to stop you from putting in a color input, but it's not going to work right. So you just got to remember that anything map like, so metallic, roughness, height, opacity, that's all that stuff is going to require a grayscale. All right. So like I said in the previous video, basically what we're going to do is this format that we have here, we're going to duplicate it for the metal map. So just to make our lives a whole lot easier, we can go like this, Control copy, Control V for paste. And it has gone and made a copy. So we're going to just try that again. We're going to highlight the frame. We're going to rename it. And then we're going to just do some things to it. For starters, we're not going to be using this bitmap. We're going to go ahead and use just colors. And now that I'm thinking about it, this hue, saturation, lightness might be overkill. Let's play this out and just experiment a little bit. Okay, this is a color node. This is a uniform color. I can also do this again. Right click, add node, uniform color. And this color can be any color you want it to be. Let's move this up so we don't have to keep messing around with it. Okay. In this particular case, we want it to be color, and I think what we're actually going to do, now that I'm looking at it, we might just get rid of this altogether, because we're actually repeating ourselves by using a hue, saturation, lightness here, because we can actually do all of that with our color. So I'm going to I'm just going to keep to the grayscales is what I'm going to do. I'm going to set this at a mid value here, and we have 1, 2, 3 different areas, because we want to repeat. We're dealing with the same areas that we were dealing in the previous thing. So I'm going to again Control C for copy, Control V, Control V. It's given me now 3 of. Let's try that again. 3 of the same colors. And now we're just going to replace it. So we had our bands here. So let's just, we can actually reuse all this stuff. So bands, metallic. And we're going to plug that into here. No, what did I just do? Oh, there it is. Our big metal areas, we're going to change this from main metal rough to main metal metallic. And then this is replacing this here. And we're using this map. So we've switched out this business where we took this one map and split it up, and now we have this color is now affected by the band's mask, and this color is our background color. And then the last thing we need to do is we need to do the highlight. So again, we are going to replace that with highlight metallic. and that goes here, and we've already got that map plugged in. So, you know, by copying it, we just save dragging little things around. Now this is a perfect example of where you would want to use clean. Oh, wait, before we do that, we really need to plug it in, otherwise that whole thing would disappear. Because this is what's going to determine that it's not junk. Let's make sure we plugged it into the right one. We're not using a height map. I'm just going to get rid of this. I just deleted it. So there we go. So right now it's just that uniform gray color, and here you've got sort of like, yeah, you can actually see what's rougher and what's smoother a lot easier now. It's actually looking kind of cool. So now that we've got this hooked up, we can go up here and do clean, and it's just going to clean all that stuff out for us. So again, we can make this a little bit smaller now. So I just highlighted the whole thing. I'm pressing Control, click to undo the metallic bits. I'm going to move this in here. I'm going to drag this little guy over here and just generally make things neat and tidy. All right. So we can now, we have these, what happened to my, oh, you know what? I think it got rid of, yeah, those comments weren't hooked up. They weren't hooked up to their little nodes, so we're going to have to redo those again. So add a comment, right click, add comment, and this is our bands metallic, and then we're going to right click, add comment, main metal metallic, yeah, you see how they're hooked up now. And then finally highlight metallic. So right click, add comment, highlight metallic. Okay. So once we can see, take a look before we expose these, give us an idea what's going on. So it now looks like it's made out of metal. It wasn't looking like it was made out of metal before, so we've got that. So we can now, just to see what's going on, I've clicked on my uniform color. Now instead of moving around the hue, saturation, lightness, I'm just going to go in here, and so I can make it darker for less metallic. So that's looking more like a plastic now. Or I can ramp it up, and that gets very metallic. And then in combination with the roughness up top, let's take a look at those bands again. So now I can rough them up. You know, it's still looking like metal. One of the reasons, and we could do it. We didn't do it in the class, but I have the map here. I noticed. One of the reasons this isn't looking super metallic is because it's absolutely perfectly smooth, and metal is very rarely absolutely perfectly smooth. So we can put some scratches on it. But let's finish up doing what we're doing. We'll do that at the very end, and this way it's like an add-on. Okay. And that's one of the other nice things about working with Substance Designer, is that because it's so fluid and non-destructive, we can go back and, in other words, you're not really obligated to do things in any particular order. You can kind of touch up a spot here and then go back and do something else and touch that up, and it's actually a very organic way of working. All right, so where were we? We did the metallic. We'll expose those later. Let's quickly, before we start exposing things, deal with our color. Because right now we have a flat color, and we have this color map, and we're basically, again, we're going to, since we got all these things worked out, and every time we copy it, it's going to move all the right maps in and out. Oh, you know, look what we did. That's another thing we have to fix. I copied a map here. I copied a this mask. That's unnecessary. I'm going to move this back out with my other masks, and I'm just going to use it but the one time, because there's absolutely no reason to use the same mask twice. What I'm doing here, I'm panning with my middle mouse button. It will let you grab something, and as you're holding down your left mouse button to get this little string to move, you can simultaneously hold down your middle mouse button and move it, so you can pan and drag at the same time. So now we can delete this. You don't want to reuse nodes if you don't have to, because, you know, it's not efficient. You know, why use things, you know, because every time it's got to calculate it, so you've got, just use it the one time. Okay, so let's make a color map. Okay, so we have a bunch of stuff in here. Now I just paused it to take a quick look to decide what I was going to do. We actually used the color map that we had baked out from ZBrush. See, when I first did this, when I used this mesh for the game, I used a black and white mesh. I really didn't. I did this one, and I did it in Photoshop because I wasn't, you know, I didn't need to teach myself how to do color in ZBrush, and it was just quicker for me to do it that way. But since we were going to bake out maps, I went back into ZBrush and colored it in ZBrush, so I gave it a different paint job. So we're not going to use this one. We're going to use the one that we did, that we baked off of the meshes from the high to the low resolution. This is, because we're being different and weird, we also used it for our roughness map. You can get away with, you know, when you've got, when your color map is, for all intents and purposes, a black and white, you can sort of get away with doing this. If this was, if I was actually taking a color, I wouldn't have made it black and white. I would have left it color, and then I would have just sucked it up here as far as my, you know, these hue saturation nodes, as far as optimization. We're going to go ahead and use this same black and white map. So I'm going to kind of move it out here. Again, this is just how I work. If it's something that's shared, I'm not going to leave it in the squares. I'm going to pull it out. I'm not going to pull it out with these guys because it's a little bit different. But what I'm going to use it for the color, and I'm going to go ahead. We're going to bring out our blend. And then I'm going to go into my library, and I'm going to get a gradient map, and I'm going to use that. Because up here, I want it to be color. I mean, it will let me put a black and white entry in here, but for this, I want it to be color. So I'm going to go ahead and switch this to color for over up in here. Thinking, what am I doing? Yeah, I think I want this in the top one. Right, let's go back to our Explorer, and we're going to, we're essentially, I think we're going to probably use the same setup we did here. So we want to light, because we're dealing with the metals, we're not really going to be, we're going to add color, and the highlights, we're going to add the color like we did in class. But for these, I think we're just going to leave it, you know what I'm going to do? I'm just going to copy it. That's what I'm going to do. Hold on a second. I'm pressing the wrong buttons here. I'm going to copy these guys. And that was kind of silly, but alright. That's all of them, yeah. I'm going to, yeah, because I was basically, there's no need to reinvent the wheel. Alright. I got to control click on that, not to pick that up too. Yeah, because this first part, we're really doing the same thing. We're using the, the same structure where we want to have the bands treated differently from the rest of the metal. And so we are going to just copy that part out. Alright, so this is going to stay the same, except now we're going to make a new comment, and we're going to call that base color bands. And then we're going to call this one, right click, add comment, base color metal. I think we all know what we're talking about. Its name's getting a little bit long. And so that's going to do exactly what it was doing the last time. So except this time we are, you know what, actually, let's make it a color. Why are we limiting ourselves to, I mean, you can have a metallic color. I think, though, we're going to do the same thing that we did with the highlights, because what this has in it, it's got this darkness, so it's going to give us some differential. Well, let's actually hook it up so we can see what we're talking about in the 3D. This is giving me some, so this black stuff, eventually we're going to, because it's part of the mask, let's look at our mask. This will give us an idea. So this is this. So we're going to be using this mask to determine our highlight colors. So yeah, I think we could do the, I think that would actually look really cool. We'll make each section actually be able to go whatever color it wants, as opposed to limiting it to sort of quote-unquote metallic colors. So let's change this to actually have it be a color. And find a sort of a blue and maybe go in here and make it a little bit less in your face. And then we can make another one that's a different color. How about a nice purple? Okay. Yeah, we're going completely off script here, but I think we might actually end up with a more interesting thing. So, will it attach now? No, I guess you have to actually make it from the thing, so we're going to have to make a new comment. Bands. And add comment. Base color metal. Just to keep things consistent. Because it will be a metal. I mean, well, unless you turn off the metal. I mean, that's the nice thing about that. You can turn this into whatever. You can be metallic or not metallic. Right, so we are going to replace this with this, and this with this, and now, oops. And now we have this multicolored space wheel. So let's, yeah, I like that. That's more funky. So let's clean this up a little bit. That's all attached. So we can just hit clean and get rid of all that junk for us. So these we're going to expose, and now we are going to apply the same principle that we did below with our highlights, except this time we're just going to use a color. So let's, I don't know, what color do we want those? Pretty, wouldn't be my first choice for color combination, but let's try something really gross. I'm going to go for gross. Right, so we have our color, and we're going to need a blend mode. So we are going to be overlaying it on top of the thing we made previously. So we're just going to bring that in there. We are going to put that on top. But because we don't have a mask in there yet, it's just sitting all over the whole thing. So we now have to go back in and get one of these masks. So yeah, we want it to be the inverse of that because we want these white areas to be that ugly yellow color. So let's go ahead. So I picked that wire up with my left mouse, and I'm now also at the same time moving it by using my middle mouse button. Yeah, that's really, wow. Okay, it's different. But now you can do whatever you want. I mean, you can go ahead and change these colors, and it's all gonna. And in the next section, when we expose these things, we can actually get it so that the end user has a color wheel that they can use, and they can do it just as easily as. Oh, that blue is, I think, probably the best. Nice, it's a dusty blue. It's okay, I guess, if you like pink and blue. Okay, so that works. Did we mark everything? Everything's got, oh, that doesn't have a name on it. So we're going to call this, right click, add comment, highlight color. Okay, we can put the whole thing in a frame. A little more compact. So again, left mouse, make a big square, right click, add frame, move that down, and base color. All right. So I think what we're going to do in preparation for the next video is we are going to go ahead and actually start creating our the parameters that we're going to expose. So again, I just double clicked in the field here, and we the input here is showing, is showing now for the entire graph. So instead of talking about a particular node, this is telling me the title of that node, I'm now dealing with substance. So this is corresponding to the name of my graph, which is substance. And in here is where I'm going to start adding my input parameters. Click the plus button. So you are now created an input parameter. It defaults to input float 1. For the moment, because we're going to, basically I just want to get the naming conventions and figuring out what we're doing and grouping them and all of this. I'm not going to worry right now about what's going on in here. I'm going to leave them float 1. I'm going to bring this down to 0.5 because chances are I'm going to want that default as 0.5 because that's going to just leave it whatever color I have set in there at the moment. So let's start at the top, I guess. Okay. So, and this is why I like to name them ahead of time, because I don't have to think too hard now. So I've got all my names worked out already ahead of time. So I've got base color bands. I'm leaving spaces here. This is going to be used in code, it will not allow spaces. It will put those in for you. If you're not making groups, sometimes what I do is I'll just like write it in, and then I'll do Control A and copy, and I know it's going to fix it for me here, and then I can just go ahead and paste that into the label if that's what you want to do. In this particular case, we're going to make groups, so all I really need to do, because this is the label that the end user is going to see. This is the actual identifier, and it just added a 1 because we used it before. So let's start this again. All right, so I just killed it. So let's start from scratch. Okay, so we're now going to, because we're creating groups, so I'm going to create a group called base color. And then within that group, we're going to have bands. I'm going to set this default as 0.5, and I'm going to leave the rest of this stuff alone. And then I'm going to make another one. And this one we're going to call base color main metal. What do we call it? Well, we called it metal, so let's do metal. So this way, if you keep these names consistent later on, we're going to kind of grow this out a bit. We're going to make it more complicated, and having name parity is usually a good idea. In this case, I'm going to call it metal, and my group is base color. And again, I'm going to move this to 0.5 temporarily. I'm not worrying about any of that stuff because this is not. These are not going to be float 1s. These are going to be float 4s. So I just want to get my names all squared away. And then I have highlight. So base color highlight. And my group is base color. So what this has done, you'll notice in here, it's sort of split them out. And then this, if you switch to the preview mode, gives you sort of a, it's not exact actually, because I don't know, maybe it's the way I have my Unity set up, but it doesn't always group them exactly the same. I mean, it'll group them in the same order, etc. But I would like, it doesn't always give me the drop-down list. Maybe that's me. But anyway, it does group them under a main heading, which is great because if you've got a lot of parameters exposed, it's really not very nice for the end user to have to scroll through this giant list of just random stuff, and you can group them. If you change, this is also a really good way of dynamically, once you've got all your stuff, all your inputs entered, you can it's a lot easier to deal with in here if you're like still in the graph looking at stuff. And then if you've tweaked it in here and you click on this again to go back to the regular edit mode, it'll ask you if you want to keep the changes that you made. We haven't done anything yet, so there's that. That is a moot point right now. So let's make some more. Okay, so that's our base color. Normals, we just have the 1. So I'm going to put a new one. We may add some more normal stuff, so I will make a group for this. So I'm going to call this globe bump. And then my label will be globe, and my group will be bump. I could call it normals. I just think it's easier to call it bump. All right, so that one's done. Actually, we're going to, well, it's okay. We set it all to default. This is actually wants to be 1 and 3, but yeah, we'll worry about it later. Okay. Like I said, it's going to apply to like most of it, but not all of it. Next, we're going to do the roughness. So again, we have this basically the same. I haven't found a way of copying these. I think you have to write it out every single time. I kind of tried to figure out if you could like duplicate them. I don't think you can. Okay, so this is roughness, so we're gonna band rough. We'll call this roughness, and that's band. And I'm tabbing through the tab will move it along for you. Oops, I didn't want to do that. I'm gonna make a new one. So the next one is oh, I did that wrong. Wait, hold on. I got that exactly backwards. And the group is roughness. So now we have, what did we call it before? Metal. Okay. Roughness. Yeah, I find you don't have to do it this way. You can actually, well, I'll show you when we expose them. You can actually make these parameters as you expose things. I just do a production line out of it. I just think it goes a little bit quicker. So we had bands, metal, highlight. Roughness, we're almost there. One more to go. And now we're doing metallic. So we have bands, metallic. We have metal. Yeah, it starts being kind of a drag when it gets really long. Let's see if we can close this out a little bit. Okay. Okay, metal, metallic. Did we do this one? Yeah, I just hate it. I set it here. You don't have to do it this way. I set it here because I hate it when they all of a sudden they switch on me if I've set them up. And if once you hook them up, it will automatically default to what you have in here regardless of what you've set up in your graph as you've been making them. So if you've been kind of tweaking colors like we've been tweaking here, if we don't set it to 0.5 ahead of time, the minute you hook that node up, it's going to turn to whatever you told it to do in here, which may not necessarily be what's going on in your actual graph. So I've just gotten into the habit of doing it this way. I mean, there's no rules. Okay, so label is metal, and this is metallic. And then highlights. That's the last one. Okay, so that's that. So we've got that chore over with. And now all we have to do is go around and expose them. So let's start where we started. I want all of this exposed. I want the whole kit and caboodle. You can well, maybe not. I thought there was a way you could expose each channel separately. I suppose you could do it with that. But anyway, so we're dealing with base color bands. Yes, because that's the one that's highlighted. So I'm going to expose. Now, this is I'll just show you quickly. If I just hit expose here, it'll give me its default name, or I can create a new one. So what we just did now by double clicking in the graph itself and making these new parameters, you can do one by one by doing it by expose and then new. But I think it goes quicker this way. So we've got our band's color, so we're going to click here, and we can just go ahead and assign it, and now it's become exposed. Now you notice that we can no longer deal with it here, and it has changed because we gave it, we gave it a value. So if we want now in our graph to change this back, we have to actually go into that particular node in here. Now we can change it either here, see, like that, or we can change it in here. But there's another problem here. You'll notice that all the color is gone. And that's because the other thing we need to work on is the type of input that it is. Now, float 1 is not what you need for color. Float 4, because you need your 3 colors plus your alpha channel. So, float 4, and now we're going to set. We don't want to use a slider. That's a pain in. I mean, you could, I guess, but why use a slider when you can actually use a color wheel? So now we're going to set what color we want. I guess, yeah, it just went super dark. Okay, so now, why isn't this working? I'm going to get back to you. Hold on a second. Yeah, I think what happened was that because we didn't set it as a float 4 before we applied it, it kind of freaked out because I guess it erased all the color information, so that's kind of what happened. So what I had done was I just went ahead and I cleared that, I cleared what I had done and I did it over again with it already set as a float 4 when I initially put it in there, and it worked. So you see, it's going back because we had set that blue color. Well, I had set that blue color in to this. So this is now being reflected in here. So it works. The problem was is that we need to switch this before we hook it up. So we'll do that with the next one. Alright, so base color metal, so that's this one. So what we're going to do is we're going to, again, double click on our graph, and we're going to switch this to a float 4, and we're going to switch this to a color. And now, just to show you what I was talking about before, let's completely change this color now. So let's change it to like this color, okay? When you hook this up, so when we expose this, this is base color metal, it's going to change to that color. So it stopped listening to what you told it to do in the graph, and it is now getting its instructions from the exposed parameters. So once you've exposed a parameter, the only way that you're going to change it is by going into the input parameters off of the main graph. You can always undo that by, again, clicking here, getting onto this drop-down list, and clear, and that's going to empty it out, but it's going to forget what it knew. So that's what happened to us before. So let's hook this guy up. And now it's gone back to getting the information. Sorry about that, forgot to turn my phone down. Okay, so let's do the highlight color. So again, we're going to do the same thing. We're going to expose it, base color highlight. And we forgot to do that one. That's all right, it's right for now. We'll leave it. Next is our bump, our globe bump. So again, now, yeah, that's the right one. Right now we have it set as intensity 1.6. Let's set this up before we attach it, since we learned our lesson from the last time. Yeah, float one is what we want. Slider is what we want. Here is where we're going to set it, where it's going to be different. Right now, the way we like it is about 1 1/4. So I'm going to leave it at that. So I'm going to change my default to 1.25 just to be even about things. This will go all the way up to 3 if you let it. So I'm going to make my maximum 3. You can clamp these things. So if, for example, I don't ever want the user to bring this down to 0. I want the minimum to be, you know, like, well, 0.1, which is 0.12. That's a good minimum. And then I want the maximum to be 3. Right now, the clamp is at false. If I click this as true, it's not going to let you move it beyond those parameters, in-game or anywhere else. I'm going to leave it like that. Oh, yeah, they changed it. Is it? Okay, so it used to be you have to click here, and it would ask you, do you want to save your changes? Now you got to go like that, I guess. Let's try that again. Let's test it out. Yeah, okay, you see, so it changed that default. This is an easier interface to deal with, because now instead of having this long list that you get here, which is like really, and it can get really long, now you've got them nice and grouped. You can make things bigger, you can make things smaller. So I use it a lot. All right, so where were we? We did the normals. Now we are going into the roughness. So here, we're not dealing with hue or saturation. We are only going to expose the lightness. So we are calling this bands rough. We're bands rough. Same deal here. And this is main metal rough. Bands rough. Did I change? Let me. I think I got one of my names wrong here. Roughness. Yeah, I guess. Yeah, metal roughness. That's confusing. Okay, let's try this again. So we will expose this here, metal rough, highlights rough. And is that everybody? Oh no, we didn't do metallic yet. Okay. So again, same deal here. Yeah, it's we don't want that. How are we going to do this? We're going to do it with a slider. That's what we're going to do, because that's going to just let it go up and down. So let's get into our parameters. And yeah, we're gonna. I think float one slider will work, because that should just give us grayscale. Let's see what happens. So bands metallic. Yeah, that seems to have worked. Yeah, we're going lighter. We're going darker. Perfect. And we get to keep this as a color because we want it to blend like colors here. Okay, so we need to do this one. So we're going to do exactly the same thing. We're just going to keep it as exactly the way it is as a float one. Main metallic, and highlight metallic. All right, so that's everything exposed. And we are actually ready to take a look at it in Unity, which we will do in the next video.